As I neared the house I had lived in for so long, but was now strangely alien to me, I faltered, then stopped. I was scared that she would be unkind to me, that she wouldn't understand that she was the one person I could turn to, the only person in the world that really knew me. I was afraid that she would read into my visit something other than friendship. But that's all it was. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. But the last years we had spent together were difficult, and she might not want to be a friend to me. I suddenly longed to see her familiar face, hear her familiar voice. I took the door key from my pocket, looked at it in my hand, then put it back, and knocked on the green front door. Sophie opened it. Her face froze. "Hello, Sophie," I said, clumsily thrusting the flowers I had bought her into her chest. "It's me." "I can see that," she said, and briefly looked past me into the street. She seemed more uncomfortable than I had expected. "Have I caught you at a bad time?" She threw another glance over my shoulder. "No, not at all, Simon. It's just a bit of a shock, you having to knock on the door of the house and me answering it. I hope you don't mind me coming. I needed to talk." "About what?" she said. "I needed to talk to you. I'm in a bit of a, I don't know, I just needed to see you. Can I come in?" She hesitated for a moment and then took the flowers I was still holding. She absent-mindedly smelt them. "Just for a minute. I'll put these in water. Thanks," she said. She looked past me again before going into the house. "Are you expecting someone?" No, I've just got things to do." I followed her into the kitchen and sat at my usual seat at the table. I hadn't been inside the house for 2 months, but being there was like meeting an old friend after many years of separation. Everything seemed awkwardly familiar. "So," she said, finalizing her arrangement of the flowers and turning to me, "what do you want to talk to me about?" "It seems I'm unemployable," I blurted out. "What?" "I've just found out that I'm a plodder, that I'm not ambitious enough for the advertising industry." "I don't understand," she said, and looked out of the window playing with her hair anxiously. She looked back at my direction, but not at me. "Who said you were how did you put it, a plodder? Look, no one knows me as well as you. Am I really that wet?" "No, of course not. You're a good man, very dependable," I said, finishing her sentence. "Yes, exactly. You're very dependable." "And that's a good thing, right?" "Yes, of course." "Then why was that a reason to fire me?" "Peter, a colleague at work, told me that was a bad thing. Apparently I need to be ambitious, hungry." "Well, that's definitely not you. You're a steady sort, a regular guy. You're very, well, yeah, dependable." "I'm getting confused. Was me being dependable a good thing when we were together?" "Well, yes, I suppose so." "Look, I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me if I'm boring." "No, of course you're not boring. You're just not a very ambitious man. You're very conservative. You don't like change," she said. "Well, why change things if they work?" "Exactly," she said. "No need to change things for the sake of it. But if things don't work or cease working, well, you're not very open to improvement." She forced a smile. "So was that the problem with us? Things stopped working?" "Simon, I really don't want to get into an argument with you." She turned back to the flowers. "I don't want to argue. I just want the truth." She spun around forcefully. Her face had darkened. "Well, here it is. No, you're not boring. But yes, things change, and you're not willing to change with them. I have been trying to find my way, find out what I want, find out who I am. Everything changed a few years ago. All our ideas about where we were going and how our life was going to be. Everything changed. Nothing was the same after we found out that... Look, I had to move on. That's all." She turned back to the flowers and rearranged them clumsily, almost pulling the delicate heads from their stems. I could tell she was crying. When did everything change? I asked gently. Sophie, when did everything change? She pulled a petal from one of the flowers and rolled it between her finger and thumb. You know when. She turned to me as if she wanted me to see her expression. You know when. Her eyes were red and tears had begun to stream down her cheeks. I could no longer avoid the place to which emotional gravity always led us. Years of tests and painfully unsuccessful IVF treatments. I could feel tears spill over my own eyelids. Yes, Simon, everything changed. Everything changed except for you. You never change. You just remain the same. Dependable. It is now 6 months since I moved out of the house I had shared with Sophie. I've been living in a boarding house with only 2 possessions left. To both I am much attached. My 2007 Ford Fiesta and my 8-year-old yellow Labrador, Eric. My life is no longer tolerable. I often think of suicide during my long, uneventful days, but although I am certain I have the commitment, I lack the courage. It's Friday. Rent day. £90 a week for a bed and breakfast, for which I usually rise too late. But they won't give a discount for bed only. My world for the last 6 months has been this small, drab room with a single bed that sags badly, probably through many years of use by many people. I try not to think about what those people did in the bed to damage its mattress so badly, but sometimes during lonely nights I allow my mind to wander into the bed's salacious past. To one side of the window is a small wardrobe faced with walnut veneer. When I first moved into the room and went through the phase of sitting motionless and staring to the distance, the intricate patterns of the walnut facing seemed fascinating. I traced stories in their interlocking patterns as one does with willow-patterned plates. But the amusement of this pastime soon faded. I couldn't understand how I had been so suddenly toppled from my stable life, and how I had fallen so far to land in this alien roomscape. But time, if it doesn't heal, at least gives one uninterrupted space for reflection. My dog, Eric, stirred, lifted his head and looked at me. "Are you listening to my thoughts, Eric?" I said. He continued to stare. "So what do you think I should do?" He rolled over and rested his head on his paws, as if he was getting comfortable for a soul-searching conversation. I smiled. "You think I should stop moaning and get on with it, don't you?" Eric closed his eyes. "But I applied for lots of positions after losing my job and got nowhere. Do you really think it will be different now?" I could feel emotions welling inside me, uncomfortable feelings I had managed to avoid for so many years. You see, I've never had the need to feel hungry for anything. It's always been easy. It's true. I've never been ambitious. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. I've always been happy, trotting along with the crowd. I bit my lip. I'm so pathetic. Couldn't I see what was happening? People being promoted over me. I've never risen above dependable, have I? I looked down at Eric. His breathing had become the deep, rhythmic sound of the contented. But the truth is, I'm one of the good guys. Bad things are not supposed to happen to people like me. I paused and looked out of the window onto a grey street. I need to take control. Isn't that what people say at times like these? I need to do something exciting. Eric opened his eyes and cocked his head to one side. He opened his mouth as if he were about to speak, then panted. "What did I say, Eric? Was it the word exciting?" He cocked his head to the other side. Something exciting. I'll show him. If I don't work at creating my own future, who will? The rest of my life might be just around the corner, waiting for me. But it's not going to wait forever, is it? I stood up, filled with vigour and Dunkirk spirit. If you want opportunity to knock, you need a door for it to knock on, right? I was startled by a sound at the door. I looked at Eric as if my last words had been prophetic. You see, Eric? Positive thinking. I opened the door to discover a stranger, a man of about 30, standing uneasily. He stretched out his hand in what appeared to be a friendly manner. Hey, I've just moved into the room next door. I thought I'd say hello, he said. I remembered seeing him a couple of days ago when he first arrived. Automatically, I raised my arm to meet his, and we shook hands warmly. That's very civil of you. Most people today would step over your dying body in the gutter without a thought, I said, slipping back into the negativity I was trying to escape. He paused and looked lost for a response. I searched for something to say. Is that a Scottish accent I can hear? Unmistakable, really, isn't it? He said with the forced enthusiasm of someone who has answered this question many times. I gestured him into the room, and he moved his large frame through the open doorway. I noticed he had to duck to clear the top of the entrance. I always wished I had to do that. I spent my early teenage years hoping to reach 6 foot, and the rest of my life trying to live with disappointment. Eric jumped from the bed and excitedly covered the stranger with licks and indiscriminate affection. Eric, that's enough. Leave him alone. My words, as usual, fell on deaf ears, and Eric continued his aggressive friendliness. I pulled him away. I'm really sorry. No, that's no problem. I love dogs, he said with a smile. Eric settled down and went back to the bed, leaving the stranger wiping saliva from his face. I'm Archie, said the stranger. Nice dog. What's his name? Eric. Please sit down, Archie. I indicated a chair. I'm Simon. Archie sat down and looked around the room, and then at Eric. I didn't know we were allowed pets. He looked at me with a disarming smile. We're not. Mrs. Minnison said she'd make a special exception as Eric seemed such a nice dog, I explained. Archie frowned. Does she charge you extra? I suspected from his appearance that he was more acquainted with ruthless commercialism than I. £5 a week, I replied, and Archie's knowing smile indicated I was right about him. You get nothing for nothing in this life, he said. Ain't that the truth? I agreed. So, what brings you to this lovely abode? He smiled again. Oh, this and that. I've got some things to do. You see, I've had some good fortune. Really? I said. But I wasn't sure I wanted to hear someone else's good news. However, my inbred good manners got the better of me. What good news? I've just inherited a small island in the Hebrides, he said with excitement. Really? An island? Just a small one, he emphasized, as if the fact that it was small made it more normal. It belonged to an uncle, he continued, then laughed. Can you believe it? I'm rich. I wanted to ask him why he was staying in this dingy boarding house if he was so rich, but felt such a question was too confrontational and would maybe suggest I didn't believe his story. You don't believe me? He asked. Had my face betrayed me? Or was he unsure of his own story? He was a big guy, so I didn't want to antagonize him. Of course I believe you. Why wouldn't I believe you? Lucky you. An island. Just a small one, he reiterated. Even a small one is still one more than most people have, I said, sounding nervous or stupid. Or both. Eric produced an insistent staccato whimper behind me. I didn't turn around. I knew what he was saying. I looked at my watch. 5 p.m. His internal clock was spot on as usual. Listen, Archie, I'd love to offer you a cup of tea or something, but he needs a pee. I mouthed the next words without sound. He needs to go for a walk. Archie looked at me strangely. What? I repeated the clandestine sentence, but this time sounding each word with the nasal bass tone of a deaf person. He needs to go for a walk. The penny dropped. Oh, I thrust my flattened hand in front of his face. Shh! Don't say the words! A second penny dropped, and he shut his mouth, pushing his lips together tightly. Archie paused and said, Maybe we could go for a drink later. That would be nice, I smiled uncomfortably. Sorry, I've got to... I gestured over my shoulder towards Eric. Archie got up and made for the door. With his hand on the doorknob, he turned his head towards me. Shall I come for you around 7:30? That would be great, I replied. Archie left, and the door closed behind him. I looked at Eric for the first time since his attempt to truncate the conversation with Archie. I felt disappointed that the visitor had not presented as exciting a prospect as I had hoped, but instead had added strangeness to my confusion. Now that was weird, I said to Eric. Eric gazed in my direction with his head cocked to one side and his deep brown eyes huge and distant. I wished I could talk to him, but he was no longer with me. He had already escaped our grey shackles, springing over the long grass in a nearby field, chasing tennis balls.